Luke Winters was only 14 when his life changed forever. He had been waiting for this trip with his father all year, a quiet winter weekend at a remote frozen lake in Alaska, far from city noise, far from problems. His father, Mark Winters, was a retired Air Force mechanic, a quiet man who didn't talk much, but in the cold silence of Alaska, father and son found peace. They stayed in a small wooden cabin surrounded by snow-covered trees and thick silence. At night, the stars were bright, and the world seemed simple. But on the third night, something strange happened. Luke couldn't sleep, so he stepped outside to get some fresh air. The lake, completely frozen, shimmered under the moonlight. But something caught his eye. Strange, soft blue lights glowing beneath the ice, moving slowly like waves. At first, he thought it was his imagination, or maybe moonlight playing tricks. But the lights moved in patterned circles, lines, then a shape, like a giant ring. Luke called his dad. Mark walked out, annoyed at first, but when he saw the lights, his face changed. He whispered, "This isn't right," and grabbed his flashlight. They walked carefully onto the lake, the ice thick and hard, but still slightly cracking under their boots. The lights beneath followed their movements, as if reacting to them. Suddenly, Luke fell forward and landed hard. The ice beneath him cracked in a perfect circle, and for a second, he saw something metallic, huge, round, glowing with unknown symbols. He touched the ice with his glove and felt a strange warmth coming from below. They rushed back to the cabin, but they were no longer alone. That night, black helicopters flew overhead. In the morning, men in black uniforms arrived. They said they were from a scientific research group, but they had no name tags, no smiles. They blocked off the area and told Mark and Luke to leave. But before leaving, Luke saw more figures in the distance, strange vehicles with no wheels, machines scanning the ground, and one object being covered with black tarp, something large, smooth, and shaped like a blade. The government claimed it was a mineral discovery. But Luke knew that was a lie. When they returned home, the news didn't say anything about Alaska. Not one word. That's when Luke began to hear the strange sound in his head at night, a soft humming, like a song without words. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't think straight. His dreams were filled with images of space, war, and a giant ship rising from fire. His schoolwork dropped, and he barely spoke. His father noticed but didn't ask, because deep inside, he felt the same. Then, 3 days after the incident, a small package arrived at their doorstep. No name, no return address. Inside was a strange, black device, small, oval, with a symbol Luke remembered seeing under the ice. The moment he touched it, the lights on the device blinked once. That same night, the news finally reported something strange: earthquakes near the Arctic Circle, a strange hum recorded under the ocean, and satellite images showing heat signatures under the ice in several parts of the world. Something beneath the earth had awakened, and it started with Alaska. Luke couldn't sleep anymore. The lights beneath the ice had followed him. The hum in his head was growing louder. His father began secretly making calls to his old Air Force contacts, trying to learn the truth. But no one would talk. Those who did simply said, "It's starting." One night, Luke sneaked out with the black device and walked into the woods. The device lit up on its own and began projecting an image in the air, an old map, marked with 6 glowing points across the world. Alaska was one. Then it changed, showing a diagram of a massive ship buried in the ice, with text in a language Luke couldn't read, but somehow understood. It said, Unit 01, awaiting command. Luke's hands trembled. He dropped the device, but it hovered in the air like it was alive. He realized something terrifying: he wasn't just a witness. He was connected to it. The next day, men returned to their home. This time, they weren't scientists. They took Luke and Mark to an underground base. Inside, Luke saw things he couldn't explain: giant screens showing satellite feeds, strange metal pieces being studied by people in hazmat suits, and a deep underground chamber filled with ancient-looking machines. A woman in a gray uniform approached him and said softly, "You're one of them, aren't you?" Luke didn't understand. "One of what?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she led him to a large window overlooking a secret hangar. And there it was, the same ship they saw under the ice, now fully raised, floating silently in the air. It was black, smooth, and covered in glowing symbols that pulsed like a heartbeat. The woman looked at Luke. "We didn't build this," she said. "It's older than anything we know. And it responded to you." Luke stared at the ship, feeling the hum in his head grow stronger. For the first time, he realized the truth. That ship wasn't just alive. It was waiting for him. And this was only the beginning. Across the planet, other ships were waking up. Earth had unlocked its greatest secret, and whatever was coming had already begun to arrive. The underground base where Luke and his father were taken was deeper than any building they had ever seen. They rode a long, silent elevator for nearly 2 minutes straight. No one spoke. Soldiers stood on both sides of them with blank faces, and the woman in the gray uniform only stared ahead. When the doors opened, Luke stepped out and saw what looked like a city carved inside the earth. There were tunnels glowing with soft blue lights, rows of computers, engineers in white coats, and huge screens showing live maps of the world. But the strangest thing was the sound. It was the same hum Luke had been hearing in his head, except now it was coming through the speakers. The woman finally spoke. "You're not crazy. That sound is real. It started transmitting 3 days ago. Only a few people on Earth can hear it without machines. You're one of them." Luke asked who built the ship, but the woman hesitated. "We don't know," she said. "Not exactly." She led them down another hallway into a large room where scientists were studying metal fragments, cold, black pieces from the ship that pulsed like a heartbeat. "These are not man-made," one of the scientists said. "But they also don't belong to any known alien metal." Another added, "There are no weld lines, no screws, no electronics. It's like the ship was grown, not built." Luke stepped closer to one of the fragments and reached out. The metal glowed brighter when his fingers got near it. One scientist gasped. "It's reacting to him," he whispered. Mark stepped in protectively, but the metal dimmed when Luke moved away. The woman in uniform introduced herself as Commander Raina Cole. She explained that the United Nations had a secret task force. created long ago, called the Sentinel Program. It was made in case something from Earth's deep past ever returned. Most people believed it was just a myth, she said. Until last week, when the first signal was received from under the ice. She took them into a dark chamber where a hologram played a recorded message. The image was blurry, but the voice was calm and ancient. If this message plays, then the war has found Earth again, it said. Our ships sleep under your feet, built in the days before time. When the sky burns, they must wake. No one could explain how the message had been stored inside the ship, or how it had survived for millions of years. But one thing was clear: Earth had once held secrets even older than humans. Commander Cole took Luke to a room where they were testing the ship's interior. Inside, symbols glowed on the walls, pulsing in rhythm. When Luke stepped in, the lights brightened, and one of the walls opened like a door. The scientists watched in shock. No one else had been able to open anything inside the ship, not even with machines, lasers, or explosives. Only Luke. As he walked deeper inside, he saw a control room, empty chairs shaped like half-moons, and a large glass panel showing a star map. But it wasn't a map of stars he recognized. These stars were arranged in strange patterns, some not even visible from Earth anymore. It was as if the ship came from a time when the universe looked different. On the control panel was a glowing handprint. Without thinking, Luke placed his hand on it. A blinding light filled the room, and for a moment, Luke's body froze. In his mind, he saw things: giant machines rising from oceans, floating cities in the sky, and humans flying ships into battle against dark creatures shaped like shadows. When the vision ended, he collapsed. Hours passed before he woke up in a medical room. His father sat beside him, eyes full of fear and worry. Luke told him everything: the visions, the stars, the war. Mark didn't understand it all, but he believed his son. Commander Cole later showed them a file marked level red, prehistory. Inside were old, handwritten documents, stone tablet photos, and ancient carvings found in places like the Amazon, Egypt, and Antarctica. All of them showed the same thing: large ships in the sky, shaped like blades, surrounded by fire. These warships have been here for millions of years, Cole said. Some scientists now believe humans had a powerful civilization before the last ice age. Maybe even before known history began. Luke asked why they had been buried. Cole looked tired. Maybe they were hidden to protect us. Or maybe to protect something else from waking up. As they spoke, alerts went off in the base. More ships had been detected: one in the Sahara, another deep in the Mariana Trench, and a third buried inside a mountain in China. All of them were beginning to activate. Luke's ship was just the first. Governments across the world began sending secret teams to the sites, but only one person had been able to open a ship: Luke. Meanwhile, strange things started happening. Earthquakes in places with no fault lines. Animals fleeing forests for no reason. Satellites picking up signals from space, matching the strange hum on Earth. Some believed it was a warning. Others feared it was a beacon. On the news, people talked about strange lights in the sky, whispers heard during sleep, and sudden blackouts near oceans. A sense of fear spread quietly. In secret, global leaders met. They called it the Skylock emergency. No one admitted the truth, but they all felt it. The Earth was remembering something terrible. Luke had more visions every night. He saw an ancient race of humans, taller, faster, brilliant. They built the warships to defend Earth from a dark enemy that came from beyond the stars. But they lost the war. Before falling, they hid their technology deep underground and erased all records. The ships were their last hope, buried in case their enemy ever returned. Luke knew that enemy was on its way. One morning, as he stared at the frozen lake on a base camera, the ice cracked open again. This time, not one, but 3 ships slowly rose. They hovered quietly, glowing with soft blue light, and pointed toward the sky as if waiting for something. Scientists recorded the ships and ran scans, but nothing made sense. The ships weren't running on fuel or electricity. They were powered by something unknown, perhaps the minds of the pilots. That night, Luke stood alone near the ship that first responded to him. Its lights pulsed stronger when he got closer. He whispered, "What are you?" And a soft voice filled the chamber. It spoke in his head, in a calm, human voice. "We are your memory," it said. "And your shield." Luke asked, "Who am I?" The ship replied, "You are the key." Before Luke could ask more, the ship began to move. It rose higher, faster than ever before, and pointed straight into the stars. Then a new symbol appeared on its side, one not shown before. Commander Cole stared at it and turned pale. "That's not our symbol," she whispered. "That's their mark. The enemy's." For the first time in centuries, the Earth wasn't just waking up. It was being watched. And the countdown had already started. The next morning, the entire base was in panic. Sirens echoed through the cold metal halls, and red lights flashed non-stop. Everyone moved fast, scientists rushing to control rooms, guards sealing doors, commanders speaking in urgent whispers. Something was happening outside, something that no one had expected to happen this soon. Luke, still weak from his vision the night before, was woken by his father, Mark, who looked more frightened than ever. "It's rising," he said in a low voice. "The ship, it's leaving the ice." They followed a soldier into the viewing chamber, a massive glass wall facing the frozen lake. What they saw took everyone's breath away. The warship, the same one Luke had touched, was floating above the ground, completely free of the ice that once trapped it. It hovered silently, almost like it was waiting. Wind swirled around it. The snow had melted in a perfect circle under its shadow, and the lake was cracking further as if something even bigger was beneath. The ship made no sound, but the hum in Luke's head was louder than ever. His nose began to bleed slightly, and his heart raced. He couldn't take his eyes off it. The ship was shaped like a giant blade, dark black, smooth like glass, but covered in glowing lines that shifted as if alive. Everyone watched in silence, afraid to speak, afraid to breathe. Then something unexpected happened. The ship turned slowly, not toward the base, but toward the sky, and a beam of light shot upward from its center. The beam stretched far into the clouds, straight into space. At the same time, satellites above Earth picked up a strange echo bouncing off the beam, an echo that didn't come from Earth. Something had responded. Within minutes, the base was contacted by other countries. Reports came in from Norway, Australia, Chile, and Siberia. In each place, another ship had begun to rise. Not all were the same shape. Some were wide like wings. Some looked like towers. But all were silent, ancient, and covered in the same strange symbols. Luke sat in a chair inside the control room, dizzy, sweating, overwhelmed by what he was feeling. "They're not just ships," he whispered. "They're alive." Commander Cole was listening nearby, pale and silent. She had been in the military for 25 years, but nothing had ever shaken her like this. One of her men ran in and said, "Commander, the ship's interior is changing. The walls are opening. It's like it's preparing for something." She turned to Luke. "It's waiting for you," she said. Luke followed her back to the hangar where the ship floated gently, barely touching the air. A staircase had formed at its base, made of the same glowing metal. No one had ever seen it before. Slowly, Luke climbed the steps, one hand gripping the cold rail. As he reached the top, a door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the ship was warm, despite the cold Alaskan air. The lights were dim but pulsing gently, like a heartbeat. Luke walked down a hallway with curved walls and symbols that moved like waves. As he entered the central chamber, the same vision hit him again, this time stronger. He saw people in robes speaking to the ships like friends. He saw planets being destroyed by black clouds. He saw the ships flying through fire. He saw children, just like him, standing in front of glowing control panels. And then he saw something terrifying, a giant shadow in space, shaped like a claw, slowly turning toward Earth. The vision ended, and Luke gasped. He dropped to his knees, coughing, eyes wide with fear. The ship's voice returned, calm and steady. "Pilot confirmed," it said. "Emergency protocol initiated. Link complete." Luke suddenly felt cold metal touch his back and neck. He screamed but couldn't move. The ship was scanning him, testing him, learning from him. Then it pulled back, and the lights dimmed again. Luke stood up slowly, heart pounding. "What do you want from me?" he asked aloud. The ship replied, "You are the last. Your blood remembers. You were chosen long before you were born." Down below, the base watched the ship's lights change color from soft blue to deep red. "What does red mean?" one scientist asked. "Is it danger?" But no one had the answer. That same moment, the ship made its first sound. A low, deep hum that shook the snow, the ground, and even the mountains in the distance. Birds flew from the trees. Animals ran. And in cities across the world, people felt a sudden pressure in their ears, as if something massive had just shifted. Satellites began losing signal. Communication blackouts spread in waves. Space telescopes picked up movement in deep space, something approaching, fast. In the ship, Luke felt the hum echo in his chest. It wasn't just sound. It was a call. A message. A warning. He ran back outside, eyes wide. "They're coming," he shouted. "They heard us." The base went into lockdown. More warships rose from their hiding places, each releasing a vertical beam of light into the sky. At least 9 were confirmed active. Others were still buried but starting to stir. Earth's hidden army, asleep for millions of years, was now waking up. But no one knew if they would be strong enough, or fast enough. Commander Cole gathered her team in the war room. She played a recording taken from deep space, an unknown signal, not from the ships, not from Earth. It repeated the same 3 words, over and over. We are near. Some believed the ships would protect Earth. Others feared they had awakened something worse. In cities, the public was beginning to panic. Videos leaked. People saw the ships in the sky. Governments could no longer hide it. Riots began. Religious groups believed it was the end of days. Scientists begged for calm, but they had no answers. Meanwhile, Luke sat alone in a cold chamber, staring at the metal device that had first arrived at his home. It had changed shape again. This time, it showed a countdown. He had no idea what would happen when it reached 0. His father tried to comfort him, but Luke was distant, lost in the sounds, the visions, the pull of something older than anything he had ever known. Then, as midnight neared, the ship outside began to rise higher. Not just hover but climb, faster and faster, like a missile without flame. Luke ran to the window just in time to see the warship vanish into the clouds, heading into space. Everyone was silent. No one had launched it. No one had given a command. It had left on its own. For hours, there was silence. Then, just before dawn, the ship returned, its surface scorched, symbols glowing brighter than ever. But it wasn't alone. It brought back something small, floating behind it. A black object, cube-shaped, glowing red. The ship dropped it gently into the snow and returned to its resting place. Scientists approached the cube with caution. It was pulsing like a heartbeat. Luke stepped forward, and the cube stopped glowing. Then it opened. Inside was a single word, carved in glowing alien letters. Luke read it aloud. Run. And then the skies began to crack. The sky cracked like glass, not with thunder, but with soundless light veins of orange and blue splitting across the clouds as if something huge was pushing against the atmosphere from above. Everyone in the base stood frozen, staring upward, not speaking, not blinking. Luke's heart pounded so loud in his chest that he could barely hear anything else. The strange black cube sat in the snow, now fully opened, its pieces curled back like petals of a dead flower. Whatever message it carried had been delivered. Luke kept whispering the word again, run. But there was nowhere to run. The world had already been pulled into something far greater than itself. That day, thousands of miles away in Arizona, a retired radio astronomer named Dr. Fiona Hale sat in her dusty trailer with her old telescope pointed toward deep space. She was watching the same area she'd been tracking since 1983, Sector R12. She'd always believed there was something wrong with that part of the sky. It was too quiet, too still. But that morning, the signal changed. Her old computer crackled, beeped, and then produced a waveform she hadn't seen in decades. She stared at the screen, then pulled a yellow file from under her bed marked Project Stonefall. She hadn't touched it in 30 years. Inside were wave patterns, old coded transmissions, and a handwritten message she'd received from her first government job: if the pattern returns, do not transmit. Shut down all systems. Notify HQ in silence. But it was too late. Across the world, satellites had already echoed the signal back into space. What had once been a whisper was now a shout. And that shout had been answered. Back at the base, Commander Raina Cole received a call from the Global Threat Monitoring Center in Geneva. The man on the line spoke fast, terrified. "Commander, 10 objects have entered our solar system," he said. "They're moving fast. Too fast. They'll reach Earth's orbit in less than 6 days." She asked what kind of objects. He answered quietly, "Not ships. Something else. We don't know what to call them." The world's strongest nations moved into high alert. Fighter jets were launched, nuclear silos activated, and the Sentinel program was now fully in control. But none of their weapons had any effect on the ancient warships. They still refused to be touched, studied, or controlled except by one boy. Luke sat alone in a cold room, his fingers wrapped tightly around the strange oval device that had come in the mail days ago. It pulsed with life, always changing, reshaping itself based on his touch. It showed him symbols, star maps, even pieces of memory that didn't feel like his own. One night, it projected something different, a memory not of the past, but of the future. He saw Earth cities darkened, oceans boiling, and giant shadows descending from the sky. He saw people running, but nowhere was safe. He saw himself, standing inside one of the warships, screaming for it to rise, but the ship was broken, its light fading. The vision vanished, and he woke up screaming. Mark rushed into the room, grabbing his son, shaking him. "It's okay," he said. "It's not real." But Luke looked at him, tears running down his face, and said, "It's not a dream. It's a memory from tomorrow." Commander Cole called an emergency meeting with the heads of the Sentinel program. Inside a concrete room, they laid out files that had been locked for decades, hidden research from the 1960s, discovered during deep Earth drilling projects. One report mentioned something called the deep signal, a frequency buried inside the magnetic field of the planet. Some believed it was natural. Others believed it was placed there like a code. The strange part was, every time Earth's magnetic field shifted, the signal echoed. But no one could trace where it started. Until now. With the ships active, scientists began to compare the hum of the ships with the deep signal. It was a perfect match. The ships had not just woken up because someone found them. They had been triggered by the planet itself. Earth had sent the signal. And now, the response had arrived. Luke was asked to enter the control chamber again. He didn't want to. Every time he touched the ship, it gave him visions, some beautiful, some unbearable. But this time, something was different. The ship was already open, already glowing. It had been waiting for him. When he stepped inside, the walls turned silver, then black, and then the ship spoke not in words, but through feelings. He felt sadness, ancient and deep, as if the ship had seen death and carried the weight of millions of years. Then it showed him an image, a dark fleet in space, shaped like daggers, gliding through starlight, destroying every planet they reached. And then the fleet split apart and passed by Earth, once long ago, ignoring it because the ships the Guardians had hidden it too well. But now Earth had been seen. The cube that returned with Luke's warship had not just sent a warning. It had confirmed Earth's location. Luke whispered, "We called them." The ship answered, "You repeated the signal. They know." Across the world, things began to change. Volcanoes trembled. Oceans rose slightly. Skies turned strange shades at sunset. Nature was responding. The Earth remembered. Scientists discovered that certain rocks buried deep underground had symbols on them matching those found inside the ships. One old tablet found in Peru had words translated by an AI, which read, "If we wake, do not speak. If we move, do not echo. If we fall, bury us again." But no one had buried the ships. They had lifted them up, studied them, connected them to machines, sent messages using their power. And now, it was too late. On the fifth day, the warship over Alaska began to hum louder, this time without Luke inside. It rose again, higher than before, and hovered motionless. The same beam of light shot upward, but this time it changed color from blue to red. A scientist monitoring the frequencies collapsed in his chair, holding his ears. "It's not just a beam," he shouted. "It's a target." The 10 unknown objects approaching Earth suddenly changed course. All of them began to fall into a single formation above the Pacific Ocean, just outside Earth's orbit. Commander Cole stood on the deck, watching the screens. "They've locked onto us," she whispered. Luke stood beside her. "We didn't just wake up the ships," he said. "We answered something we were never supposed to hear." That night, all 9 warships on Earth began to hum in sync. Their lights changed to red. Inside each one, strange shapes began to appear, pilot chambers lighting up, weapons slowly unlocking, panels moving into place. They were not ships meant for travel. They were ships meant for battle. And some force had known this day would come. The final warning came from the stars themselves. An old telescope in Chile captured an image that shook every scientist who saw it. Above the 10 dark objects, a much larger shadow had appeared. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a planet. It was something else. The stars behind it had vanished, like a mouth had opened in space. The last line of the old tablet's translation was shared across secret networks: "If they return, you will not have time to speak. Only time to choose stand, or burn." Earth had chosen to stand. But no one knew if it would survive. The warships were ready. The countdown on Luke's device reached its final number. 0. And the sky split open again. The moment the countdown hit 0, the world changed. It didn't explode, it didn't shake, nothing like that. It just stopped. Every bird in the sky froze in mid-flight. Every windmill stopped turning. Every phone and satellite lost signal. For exactly 40 seconds, the Earth fell into a deep, strange silence. Then a low, distant sound rolled across the sky like thunder, but it wasn't coming from the ground, it was coming from space. All over the world, People stepped outside and looked up. At first, they saw nothing. Then the clouds parted, and something enormous moved behind them, something too big to fully see. It blocked the stars, bent the sky, and seemed to glide without effort. Governments sent fighter jets, but the jets never reached it. They simply vanished. No explosions. No fire. Just gone. Luke stood outside the Alaska base, eyes wide, heart racing. His ship hovered above him again, silent, glowing red. Commander Cole came running toward him, shouting his name, but Luke didn't hear her. The ship's hum was too loud now, too deep, it was inside his bones. The sky cracked once more, and then the shape revealed itself. It wasn't a ship like the others. It looked more like a living creature, but built of metal and black crystal, with long arms like wings and a central eye that glowed like a sun. The base's systems were fried within seconds. Computers shut down. Generators failed. And then came the voice. Not through speakers. Not through radios. But in the minds of every person on Earth. It was cold, deep, and ancient. It said, "You kept them. You protected their legacy. But now, we have come to take it back." Around the world, people collapsed in fear, some crying, some screaming. Others fell silent, stunned. Commander Cole grabbed Luke by the shoulders. "What does that mean?" she asked. But Luke was already breathing hard, his body shaking. "They're not here to destroy Earth," he whispered. "They're here for the ships. For what we were." Cole's eyes widened. "We were like them once, weren't we?" Luke nodded. "We were them. Or maybe something even older." The voice returned. "You are the last seed of a fallen garden." The Guardians disobeyed. They buried the flame. "We have returned to extinguish it." Suddenly, the warship above the base lit up bright blue, the red glow vanishing. The ship turned sharply and rose to meet the sky creature. It didn't wait for commands. It acted on its own. And around the planet, the other 8 warships began to rise as well, forming a slow circle in the upper atmosphere, surrounding the large invader. They weren't alone anymore. They were awake. One of the scientists back at the base, Dr. Javier Lin, who had been decoding the ship's star map, rushed into the command chamber, his hands full of papers. "It's not just a fleet," he said. "The ships, they were part of something bigger. A network. A warning system. But also, a test." Cole frowned. "A test?" He nodded. "They were left here not to save us, but to see if we were worthy of saving." He pointed to the translation. "If the Guardians rise on their own, without being forced, then the seed remains alive." Luke's ship was the first to strike. It moved faster than anything humans had ever built, slicing through the air like a blade. It fired a beam of white energy at the sky creature. The beam hit the creature's center and made it stagger back, but not fall. It roared not in sound, but in everyone's heads. "The flame still burns," it said. "Then let the garden be tested." From the dark sky above, more shapes appeared, smaller versions of the creature, but still massive, each one shaped like a mix of machine and monster. They moved like shadows, spreading across the sky, diving toward the earth. One flew toward New York. Another toward Tokyo. One toward Moscow. One toward Cape Town. They weren't attacking people. They were searching. Searching for the others like Luke. The ones connected to the warships. Luke ran to the control room. The ship's device floated beside him, now bright gold. It spoke for the first time in a voice that wasn't alien. It was his own voice, echoed back from the ship itself. "You must gather the pilots," it said. "The flame is scattered. Bring them to the center, or all will fade." Luke asked, "Where is the center?" The ship showed him an image, a giant structure beneath the ice of Antarctica. Not a base. Not a ship. Something far older. The heart. It had been buried since the First War, waiting for the Guardians to return. And now, it was waking. Commander Cole looked at the image and said, "That thing, it's not human, is it?" Luke answered, "It's what we used to be." The signal that woke the ships had also unlocked memories hidden in Luke's blood, in his DNA, passed down from ancestors long forgotten. They were called the Forgeborn, an ancient race of human-like beings who once ruled across galaxies, before they were hunted down by the Star Eaters, the shadow race that now stood above Earth. The Forgeborn had one rule: never return to war. So, they built the ships, locked their weapons, and buried everything on a quiet planet Earth, hoping time would bury memory. But the universe doesn't forget. Now, the flame had flickered again. The Star Eaters had found it. The visitors weren't aliens. They were the final judges. Earth wasn't being invaded. It was being judged. In hidden places across the world, other young people like Luke were being visited by dreams, visions, and strange feelings. A girl in Turkey found herself inside a cave where a hidden ship opened its doors to her. A boy in Kenya saw glowing sand and dug up a crystal that matched Luke's device. A blind girl in India drew star maps she had never seen. Each one was a descendant of the Forgeborn. Each one held a piece of the key. They were all connected. Luke's ship glowed again and pointed toward the sky. "The heart will rise when the flame gathers," it said. "Only then can Earth stand." Luke turned to Cole. "We have to find them. All of them." Cole stared at the sky, where warships danced with monsters in a silent battle above Earth. "Then we better move fast," she said. "Because the test has begun." And somewhere, far below the surface of Antarctica, the ground began to melt, not from heat, but from time unwinding. A giant structure, buried for millions of years, started to pulse. The heart of Earth, the final gift from the Ancient Ones, was waking up. But whether it would save humanity, or judge it, was still unknown. The visitors from before had returned. And they had brought the end with them, or maybe, a second beginning. The skies above Earth were no longer silent. Every night, new lights appeared, some falling like comets, some hovering like silent watchers. News channels stopped reporting numbers. Cities went quiet. Schools shut down. Planes were grounded. Everyone knew something was happening, but no one could explain it clearly. They only knew one thing: the ancient warships had not just returned, they had chosen. All over the world, ordinary children and teenagers were being drawn towards strange locations: deep forests, old caves, empty lakes, and ruins that had never been studied before. They weren't being taken, they were being called. And once they answered the call, their lives changed forever. In a quiet mountain village in Peru, a boy named Mateo stood on the edge of a cliff, watching the stars. He had dreamed of a voice calling his name every night since the countdown ended. He followed the voice one morning and found a massive stone buried in the earth, shaped like a ship's wing. When he touched it, it glowed gold. He passed out. When he woke up, the rock was gone, but in its place floated a silver crystal, slowly turning in the air and whispering his name. In a fishing town in Norway, a girl named Freya was playing near a frozen river when she heard music under the ice. It wasn't human. It felt ancient. She chipped at the ice with a metal rod and found not water, but light. The ground opened, and a small ship, sleek and shaped like a bird, rose silently into the air, turning toward her. In Japan, a boy named Kaido, who had never spoken a word in his life, walked out of school and vanished for 2 days. When he returned, he spoke 3 ancient words in a forgotten language, and then his eyes glowed like stars. His parents screamed. But the ship that arrived above their house didn't attack, it simply hovered and waited. One by one, these young people were being chosen by ships that had waited for them across centuries. They had no idea who the Forgeborn were. They didn't know what the heart of Earth was or what the Star Eaters planned. But they each had something inside them, something the ships recognized. It wasn't strength or intelligence or power. It was memory. Blood memory. Fragments passed down from long-lost ancestors who once walked among the stars. These fragments lived in the children now, and the warships responded only to them. Back in Alaska, Luke stood in a training chamber inside his warship, watching as strange symbols hovered in the air, moving around his hands. The ship was teaching him, showing him memories that weren't his. Battles in space. Cities that floated in the sky. A race of people who looked like him but glowed with energy and spoke with their minds. He was overwhelmed, but the ship was patient. It taught him slowly, one vision at a time. Commander Cole watched from the base, more worried than ever. "How many more are being chosen?" she asked. Dr. Lin shook his head. "We can't track them all. Some of them are in places we can't reach. The ships don't care about borders. They care about bloodlines." Cole frowned. "So what do we do? Wait for them to gather?" Lin looked at her with fear in his eyes. "No. We help them. Because if we don't, the Star Eaters will find them first." Meanwhile, in a hidden lab under the sands of Egypt, a group of scientists found a ship buried so deep it was fused into stone. The ship didn't respond to their tools. But when a 12-year-old girl from Cairo accidentally wandered into the lab and touched the hull, the ship came alive. The walls glowed. The ceiling shook. She fainted and had a vision of a massive battle where she was at the center, guiding light across the stars. Her name was Amira, and when she woke, she said a name no one had ever told her: Sarakai. It was the name of her ship. She wasn't scared. She was ready. As the children awakened, the Star Eaters moved closer. More dark shapes appeared in the sky, still not attacking, but scanning the planet, looking for the flames. They didn't speak again. They simply waited. Watched. One of the warships near Antarctica was destroyed in an instant when a child rejected the connection. A massive explosion turned the ship into ash. The Star Eaters could sense weakness. Luke knew time was running out. He stood before the global screen, now speaking to the world for the first time. "If you are feeling strange," he said, "if you are dreaming of lights, or voices, or places you've never seen, don't be afraid. You're not alone. You're one of us. Find your ship. Let it show you the truth." His voice was shaky, but strong. Around the world, more children stepped forward. Not just teenagers, some as young as 9, some in wheelchairs, some who had lost families in wars. The ships didn't care about strength. They cared about legacy. In India, the blind girl who had drawn star maps led her parents to a dry canyon where a ship lay hidden under roots. It responded to her touch, lighting up with a sound like soft wind. In Brazil, twin brothers ran into the jungle during a storm and found a golden door floating in the air. They stepped through it and vanished, only to reappear an hour later flying one of the smallest, fastest warships Earth had ever seen. Each of these children now held a piece of Earth's forgotten past. But not everyone saw them as heroes. Some governments grew afraid. "We cannot trust children with alien ships," one leader shouted. "They could turn against us." Protests broke out. Walls were built. In some places, ships were attacked by missiles. One ship returned fire not at the military, but at the weapons themselves, destroying them mid-air without hurting anyone. The ships were defending their chosen pilots. In one tragic moment, a young boy in France was pulled away from his ship by soldiers. The ship screamed in light. It self-destructed, shaking the ground. The boy vanished with it. His name was never released. Luke watched this from the ship's vision feed, tears in his eyes. "They don't understand," he whispered. "These kids aren't the threat. They're the only hope we have." His ship responded gently, "Only those who carry fire can survive the dark." Now, with more than 30 pilots awakened and only a few days left, the ships began to send a new message, a location. They all pointed to Antarctica. The heart was calling. It wanted the children to gather. To decide. It would not speak to adults. Only to the chosen. Commander Cole gathered her team. "We get them there, safe. No matter what." Around the globe, a secret convoy began. Ships hid beneath oceans, under the ground, inside storms. They carried the chosen one by one toward the ice. As they traveled, each child began to remember more. Not just battles or cities, but emotions. One girl remembered being a healer on a moon called Sara. A boy remembered holding hands with a friend as they escaped a dying star. These weren't dreams. They were memories, lives lived long ago, now returning to light a path forward. And the children? They weren't afraid. They felt whole. The world watched, breath held. Because soon, the heart would open. And once it did, Earth would finally remember who it used to be. Or be judged unworthy and fall forever into silence. The skies above Earth had never looked like this. What once held stars and silence was now painted with fire, light, and shadows from ships beyond human understanding. People all over the world stood on rooftops, fields, mountains, and beaches, staring up. The stars were disappearing behind massive shapes that moved like smoke but held power like thunder. They weren't human ships. They weren't even the ancient Earth warships. They were something else, something dark. The Star Eaters had arrived. At first, there was no sound, only wind. Then came the low hum. It spread across the planet like a heartbeat. Birds flew in circles, animals ran, and even the ocean seemed to rise with warning. The chosen children were already on their way to Antarctica, following the silent call of the heart. Their ships moved through tunnels of light that couldn't be tracked by radar or satellite. They were being drawn not by coordinates, but by feeling. The heart didn't speak in language. It spoke in emotion: fear, hope, memory, longing. And it was calling its children home. Luke sat inside his warship, eyes closed, breathing slow. His hands glowed faintly. The ship was giving him visions, flashes of what was coming. He saw the sky cracking. He saw burning cities. He saw the heart opening, and something inside it, a pulse, a choice, a door. Commander Cole watched his face from her ship. She had followed him all this way, not as a leader now, but as a protector. She didn't understand everything, but she trusted him. "They're close," she whispered to herself. "They'll be here before the storm." Then, the sky burned. Without warning, a massive crack of red light tore across the clouds above the Pacific Ocean. It wasn't lightning. It wasn't natural. It was a weapon. One of the Star Eaters had fired something into Earth's upper atmosphere, some kind of message, or perhaps a test. The explosion didn't kill anyone, but it knocked out power in 5 countries. Planes fell. Satellites blinked. People screamed. All over the world, screens went black and then flickered with one chilling message: surrender the flame. No one knew what it meant except the chosen. They felt it inside. The flame wasn't a thing. It was them. The Star Eaters wanted them. Not to destroy, but to use. To break open the heart. Because only someone from Earth's forgotten bloodline could open it, and only the purest of that line, the innocent, the unbroken, the young, could survive the process. That's why the ships had chosen children. Not because they were weak, but because they still remembered what it meant to believe. Luke stood at the edge of his ship's platform, now hovering just above Antarctica's icy plains. Around him, more ships were landing, each carrying a chosen child. Freya, Kaito, Amira, Mateo, and others now stood in a loose circle. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The air was thick with energy. The ice cracked beneath them, not from heat, but from pressure. Something huge was rising. Then the ground exploded in a circle of light. A giant crystal platform emerged, glowing like a sun frozen in time. At its center, a door pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. The heart had awakened. It had waited thousands of years for this moment. And now, it would judge. "Step forward," said a voice, deep and beautiful, not from the sky but from inside their minds. One by one, the children walked onto the platform. As they did, the door lit up with different colors: gold, blue, red, green, each one matching their inner light. The heart was reading them, accepting them. Until suddenly, the sky screamed. The clouds tore apart, and 3 massive dark ships descended with speed and power that shook the earth. They weren't subtle. They didn't ask permission. They came like a plague, with long claws, burning engines, and beams of black light that tore the sky in half. The Star Eaters had come to take what they wanted. The warships of Earth rose into the air to protect the children. They formed a circle, glowing with old power. Each child was inside a ship now, bonded with it completely. They didn't need to be told what to do. Their instincts guided them. The battle in the sky began like lightning, fast and blinding. Energy bolts screamed across the cold sky. Some ships dodged and twisted like birds. Others held their ground, forming shields. Luke's ship was at the center, guiding the others. He moved his hands through glowing symbols in the air, commanding light and wind, memory and fire. But the Star Eaters were strong. They had done this before. In the distance, one Earth ship was hit and fell into the sea. A boy inside screamed, not from pain, but from sorrow. He had seen a future that might now never come. Freya's ship flew beside his, shielding him until he rose again. They didn't fight with hate. They fought with unity. But even with all their strength, the children were outnumbered. The Star Eaters released drones, black, insect-like machines that latched onto ships and tried to tear them apart. Amira's ship was nearly pulled down, but just before impact, a beam of golden light sliced through the sky and vaporized the drone. It was Matteo. He smiled through the sweat. "Told you I'd watch your back." Back on Earth, Commander Cole and Dr. Lin watched from a hidden base. "Can they win?" Cole asked. Lin didn't answer. He looked at the heart. It was changing. Growing. The door was beginning to open. A voice spoke again, "One must enter. One must choose. One must sacrifice." Luke heard it too. He turned to the others. "It wants someone inside." "Why?" Kaito asked, already flying alongside. "Because that's how we finish it," Luke said. "That's how we unlock the full power." "And the sacrifice?" Amira asked. Luke didn't answer. He already knew. The heart was not just a key, it was a gate. Once opened fully, it would either connect Earth back to the ancient network of Forge-born power, or destroy it forever. And to guide the process, someone had to stay inside. Alone. Forever. He looked at the others. "I'll do it." "No," Freya said quickly. "It called all of us." "But it bonded with me first," Luke said gently. "I have the memories. I've seen the path. There must be another way." Matteo yelled through the battle noise. But time was running out. The sky was burning. Another Earth ship fell, this time crashing into the ice, sending a quake that cracked the heart's platform. The door opened halfway. Light poured out. Luke flew toward it, dodging enemy fire. "Cover him!" Kaito yelled. The children didn't argue. They formed a wall, flying in a circle, holding off the Star Eaters while Luke hovered before the heart. It pulsed once. Then again. It was waiting. Behind him, the sky burned brighter. One of the Star Eater motherships lowered a massive claw, preparing to strike the heart directly. If it succeeded, it would end everything. Now, Luke. Freya shouted. Go. Luke looked back once. He smiled not in sadness, but in peace. He flew into the light. The moment he passed through the heart, a wave of color exploded from the crystal platform. It covered the children, the ships, the sky. And the Star Eaters screamed. Their ships began to crack, as if the light itself was tearing them apart. The children watched in awe. The heart had chosen. Luke was gone but not dead. His voice echoed through every ship. The fire lives. Keep it burning. And just like that, the sky began to clear. The Star Eater ships retreated, some exploding in the distance, others fading like smoke. Earth had survived, but not just because it had old weapons. It had survived because it remembered who it truly was. And because the children had not run. They had stood. They had burned. The sky was finally quiet. For the first time in weeks, there were no screams, no flashes, no explosions tearing through the clouds. The fires above Earth had faded, leaving behind trails of golden mist that shimmered gently like the memory of a dream. The last of the Star Eater ships had vanished beyond the edge of the atmosphere, leaving only wreckage and silence behind. But down below, near the glowing crystal platform at the heart of Antarctica, something even more powerful had been born. The heart, once sealed for thousands of years, now stood open like a giant flower made of light and stone. It pulsed gently, no longer threatening, but calm. Peaceful. The children gathered around it, their faces lit by its soft glow. Freya, Kaito, Amira, Mateo, and the others stood quietly, not cheering, not crying, just breathing. They felt Luke's presence in the light. He was gone, but not lost. Somewhere inside the heart, he still lived, not in body, but in purpose, in energy, in the core of the ancient force that had waited so long to awaken. Freya stepped forward and placed her hand against the glowing door. It was warm, like sunlight on skin. "Thank you," she whispered. No one needed to ask what she meant. All of them understood. Around them, the Earth warships hovered silently, as if bowing. The battle was over. The skies had been defended. But now came something harder: the future. Back at the Arctic base, Commander Cole and Dr. Lin watched the sky on their screens. They had survived too, but barely. Their facility was cracked, some towers bent from the shock waves. Yet the signal from the heart was clear and stronger than ever. "He did it," Lin said softly. Cole nodded. "But at what cost?" Lin looked at her. "Everything comes with a cost. But this gave us back who we were." And he was right. Across the planet, strange changes began. Not destruction but awakening. In the jungles of the Amazon, ancient stones long buried began to glow faintly, humming with the same energy as the heart. In the Sahara Desert, satellites picked up strange patterns in the sand, revealing perfect circles that hadn't been seen in thousands of years. And in the skies, the clouds began to shift, forming symbols only visible from space, symbols that matched the markings on the warships. Earth wasn't just a planet. It was a key. A hub. A heart in a broken chain of ancient worlds. The warships had known. That's why they had hidden. That's why they had waited. Not for weapons. Not for revenge. But for the right souls to come along, the ones brave enough to remember, to believe, to protect. In the weeks that followed, the children became symbols of hope. But they weren't treated like heroes with parades. They didn't want fame. They wanted rebuilding. Peace. Connection. Freya worked with scientists to unlock more messages from the heart. Kaito helped other children understand their new connection to the ships. Mateo led missions to places touched by the heart's awakening, guiding teams to ruins filled with ancient tech. Amira traveled to the United Nations to speak not as a soldier, but as a voice for the new generation. She stood before world leaders and said simply, "We are not alone. But we are enough if we stand together." No one argued. Because they had all seen what came from the sky. And they all knew it would come again someday. But this time, Earth wouldn't hide. The heart had linked with systems across the stars. Earth was sending signals now, calls of light, truth, and warning. We remember who we are. We are not broken. We are not afraid. And in a distant galaxy, on a dark and dying moon, something stirred. Something old. A being with eyes like glass and a mind full of dust opened its palm. Inside, a tiny golden light blinked twice, Earth's signal. It smiled not in anger, but in recognition. The heart lives, it whispered. Let the others know. And far beyond Earth's edge, stars began to flicker as ancient machines powered back on. Across the universe, the Forge-born network long thought lost was waking. And it all started because one boy stepped into the light. The children never stopped visiting the heart. Sometimes, they would sit on the platform in silence. Sometimes, the wind would hum a soft song. And sometimes, when the stars were especially bright, they would hear a voice, not loud, not clear, but familiar. Keep the fire burning, it would say. And they would smile, look to the sky, and whisper back, we remember. Earth had unlocked its greatest secret. And the stars were listening.